Welcome everyone to today's podcast. My name is Paul. I'm a very happy member of Cocaine Anonymous and I live in Peterhead, Scotland. And we carry a message of hope, faith and courage on this channel to any recovering addicts or anyone still struggling with drug addiction. You can get free and stay free. We suggest coming along to meetings, getting yourself a support network and a program of complete abstinence. During this podcast, there'll be various pieces of information up on the screen whereby you can attend meetings, and there'll be different things, readings and knowledge about recovery. I'm really thrilled today that I've been joined with a friend of mine, Ashley. Do you want to say hello to our listeners?
Yeah, hi Paul, thank you, cheers.
I'm really pleased that he's come along today to share with us his message of experience, strength and hope around recovery from addiction. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks Paul, thanks for inviting me along today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, my name's Ashley. I'm a drug addict. So yeah, I'll just basically share, my experience around drug addiction and what it was like and kind of what it's like today and how I live, on a daily basis without living in that sort of fear mindset. But yeah, I'll just sort of start now. So yeah, I started off, using cocaine and, started doing it on a sort of a frequent basis, and then the progression of the illness started to sort of hit me fairly quickly, really. With it being of a thing of doing it sort of once a night, once a week, and then it sort of rapidly became a consistent thing of every other day, once a day, sort of twice a day, and then it just sort of progressed, and then all of a sudden I'm kind of in this insane sort of insanity world where, my mind was just consistently fulfilled with that thought of using cocaine and wanting to sort of do anything to get hold of it, really. And, for me, it was just as soon as that thought was starting to sort of manifest within me, I had nothing there to sort of say, well, hang on a minute, that's a bad idea. I was just, as soon as the thought was there, it was, for me, it was, I'd just be gone. And it was just that mental inconsistency within my mind just folded, I just didn't have anything there to sort of manage and sustain that thought. It was too much for my mindset, I suppose, at the time to realize that that isn't a good idea, and it just consistently followed me for about 5 or 6 years, just that insane way of living, just to feel good at the weekend or the odd day in the week. And then it sort of progressively got worse around that time period, lying and full of resentment and everybody's against me all the time, and yeah, just really kind of just everybody else. It was everybody else's fault why I was using, really. I didn't really take any accountability for my behaviors and my actions. And then yeah, progressively just what obviously becomes of addiction and the progressive illness of it. I started stealing and stealing out of sort of members of the family and manipulating them into thinking that I was needing things for other sort of purchases, but it was for my drug addiction, really. And that's that's the progressiveness of my experience around cocaine use. It's started off as a once in a blue moon thing, and then I'm sort of dipping my hand in someone's purse, and it's just that's how sort of progressive my experience got around using cocaine. And then yeah, I sort of started using it, obviously, and all these sort of consequences were coming around, and I sort of started to think that maybe these consequences could kind of give me a reason to stop using, really. You know, and I really thought, and I've hoped to, you know, just really hope that, you know, the thought of, you know, my wife leaving me, or, you know, my kids and all the rest of it, you know, what goes with this illness. And, you know, I thought that would be enough for me just to kind of knock it on the head and leave it alone. But, you know, it just kept coming back to me pretty much all the time, really. Just didn't have any kind of sort of normality, I don't know, like sound reasoning to make me want to stop using. And yeah, so that pattern just kept sort of hitting me all the time. I'd get periods of clean time, and yeah, would just go out and use again. You know, I'd think I'd be doing all right, and yeah, just really didn't have anything within me, or, you know, thought that I could probably use normally. And then it just used to just sort of happen to me. You know, I just used to think that I could just do things like what the norm do, I suppose. And just, but yeah, it just always used to happen to me. I always used to get a bit of clean time, and all of a sudden I'd be in that place of just desperation again. And it started to just feel, and you know, the drug used to react different to me, I suppose. It wasn't like how it was when I first took it, you know, and isolation and all the things that come with it. And for me, more so than ever, it was just the aggressive behavior that used to just happen to me as well. You know, family members used to just get the full brunt of it. And you know, I'd do anything to get out of the way that I was feeling, you know, and to escape, you know, just to try and escape me, I suppose, and just wanted to feel different. So yeah, like I say, you know, the cocaine use for me was just getting out of hand, really, to the point where it was looking like I'd probably be sitting in a bed sit on my own, you know. But luckily, you know, I'd kind of heard about the 12-step movement, and, you know, Cocaine Anonymous as a fellowship, and just started to sort of, I like using the word receptive. You know, I sort of started to become a bit more understanding of what was required and what was kind of asked of me. But yeah, I still had it. I still had these sort of lingering emotions where I felt like I didn't really quite sort of, I don't know, I wasn't quite ready to kind of take on this not responsibility, or it probably is the word, but, you know, this sobriety life. And, you know, for me at the time, it was a bit of a commitment to just sort of put all the you know, the mind altering substances down. And, you know, and as time progressed, you know, I still kept picking up on the odd occasion, and still had that lurking motion that it'd just be all right just to use one more time. And, you know, those one more times, I'm sort of convinced that, you know, I kind of had to sort of smash myself to pieces a few times around the first one, or because I can just forget. I forget, you know, I forget how bad it was. And I kind of forget that, you know, I'll you know, I'll use cocaine, and you know, I was using cocaine, and when I was in the madness. And, you know, I'd think that it'd be all right just to use it once more, but not really remembering the carnage and the chaos two or 3 weeks ago, prior to me thinking that it would be all right to using cocaine. And that was just, for me, you know, the process of me kind of getting the feelers of recovery, and then, you know, starting to come to believe that, you know, I cannot, and, you know, I cannot use and drug, you know, like other people. You know, I can't just sort of use and have a drink and say, look, I'm going to be heading home at 10 o'clock. You know, it just hasn't been my experience. You know, my phone goes off, and, you know, all bets are off, I suppose, you know. So yeah, so like started to come into the rooms, and, you know, listening to what other people were sharing. And yeah, like I said, I just couldn't get it, I suppose. I just wasn't being yeah, I just wasn't able to understand the actual severity of what could happen if I was consistently using. But then, sort of further down the line, I was getting into the book with a fellow in recovery, and and started to sort of understand about what it was talking about in the book. Like the chapters in the book, and the for me, I was understanding the word powerlessness, and the unmanageability, all these words that were in the book, and I just couldn't really quite understand it. But I had to kind of look at that and see how that had a part to play in my recovery, the unmanageability. And for me, I think I looked at the unmanageability was the unmanageability around the way that I was thinking and behaving. And the powerlessness was, for me, again, came to sort of believe that, the powerlessness was, I just didn't have any kind of, good enough reason or kind of willpower to stop using. So yeah, kind of got a bit more into it now at this point, started to sort of do some more meetings, and was getting into some, solid sort of recovery, people that have had sort of decent amount of experience, their own experience around drug addiction, and, listening to them, and, understanding, what they're doing to kind of stay on the sort of, the clean sobriety life. And, I started to believe that this stuff can actually work. And, I can't really remember, for me anyway, I can't really remember the day or time on when it happened. But, it's only been, not recently, but, just around me, that experimentation of thinking that I can just have one more. It took me probably a few experimentations to realize that I had to sort of, knock myself down a peg or two to realize that it's either doing, the the doing the just getting involved in working with with newcomers, and just being a part of something different to what I was originally thinking that I knew. I knew how to stop using, because everything that I kind of tried or knew something around what I was doing, I just kept picking up again. I didn't, like I said before, I just didn't have anything within me to kind of make it a reality for me to understand that, using was really bad, and just kept always picking up. And, I've just sort of, came to some sort of understanding that, helping the, somebody in recovery, or a newcomer, or, or doing some service, and just, reaching out to somebody that's struggling, is, for me, is is the start of it all, because from my understanding, so some people are, they're offered with a solution, and they just walk away from it all. And for me, that was probably me at the start. And I tried to sort of convey this message in a way that that looks and sounds realistic around my experience, and what it's like, and to be honest with you, to see if they relate to anything that I'm saying, or they might be able to match their experience within the book. Because that's sort of the stuff that I had to kind of do, I suppose, is match my sort of using around the sort of the chapters in the book. I think there's a paragraph in the book, Jim's story, and that really kind of resonated with me around, it'd be, I can't really remember some of the scenarios within that chapter, but it was just really related. I just related to it, and I think that's what it's about. It's getting some identification around, the progressive illness within drug addiction, and then kind of matching my experience with it. And because I always used to relapse all the time. I just didn't have it within me to kind of concede, I suppose, around the 12 steps. But I've always got to be, today going forward, I have to be aware of my thinking and watching those sort of behaviors, and because the thinking around it all was the problem. The thinking of the thoughts, and and getting into some prayer and meditation, and even if it's just quiet time, sitting in a room and just sort of analyzing my thoughts, and reflection, and all this stuff that is I've found that it's a process. It doesn't happen. I didn't have a sort of a white light sort of shone over me, and and it was, I think, like it says on step 2, we came to believe that a higher power could restore us to sanity, and I relate to that because it wasn't an overnight thing. I had to come to believe that this power, whatever it is, God, I call it God, but can restore me to sanity over that that thought, that idea that I've had a bit of clean time now, maybe it'll be all right. And for me, if I can restore my mind to sanity around that thought, and or even just the way that I'm feeling, because I can feel all right and still get a thought. I can still feel depressed and get a thought. So it's the alcoholic, or the drug addicted mind, the disease of alcoholism, drug addiction. I'll just forget. It's like I've just woke up and everything's all right again, for me. So yeah, if I can get restored to some kind of sanity around a thought, or a behavior, and obviously, like, going forward as well, like we get into some like the resentment sort of part of it, and I came to sort of, I got to do a bit of that, luckily. I'm grateful that I was a part of doing the step 4s, and the inventory, and making the amends, and it's all part of the 12 steps for me, and looking at how bad and how sort of how kind of sort of vulnerable I was around other people, and how affected I was with other people's behaviors, how much it affected my mindset. And this is what I've gathered, that the 12 steps do. It kind of gives you a change, and an ego deflation, and it kind of puts you out the way, and you look at your part, and you kind of get an understanding of what you were doing for other people for other people's behaviors. So yeah, that's me going forward. But I got to a place where I was being a bit more receptive, and not just probably sort of taking it back a peg again, but not kind of just listening to people, and thinking, oh, I've cracked it. I think for me, it's finding recovery around the way that I thought it would be, and getting my like a personal journey for me, because I can listen to a lot of people share, and they might, they could sound amazing, but it's helpful because I get the identification, and I get some I get some experience and things. But I really needed to sort of work out, what I needed to do, kind of thing, to stop using. And it was, the 12 steps, getting a sponsor, and just being, having some accountability for what I'm doing. you know, and really kind of, you know, stopping thinking that I've got some kind of control over my drug addiction, you know, and you know, having the ability to be able to, you know, or be in a position that, you know, going forward, like today, I can, you know, I'm in a position today that I can actually help somebody in recovery, or, you know, help somebody in the rooms, and that's only because somebody stuck around for me, you know, and they showed me what to do and how I needed to kind of convey this message to the newcomer or anyone in recovery, and for me, you know, that's the big sort of part of it, you know, being of help to others, and kind of getting into a place where I can sit down with somebody and read the book to them, and, you know, see their eyes light up around what I'm telling them, and, you know, hopefully they'll relate to what it is that's going on, because I suppose they need to know, and I need to know what I suffer with, you know, because I could probably have 1,001 people in the room saying I've got a problem, but I really need to see that I had a problem for me to kind of go, well, hang on a minute, I need to kind of look at this a bit more in depth. And, you know, it's just been my experience, I suppose, around the drug addict sort of cocaine insane lifestyle, I suppose. And yeah, now it's different, you know, I've got some kind of awareness, and, you know, the mental inconsistency that goes with drug addiction is kind of rebuilt itself back up into a place that, you know, I've got the capability and the capacity to just, you know, get restored to sanity around that thought, you know, that idea, and that's all been brought about, you know, for me anyway, by, you know, being receptive, you know, having someone that's, you know, being receptive, and yeah, just being a bit, you know, just having a bit of an open mind around this stuff, and yeah, today it's different. I don't get the thought of using, and if it does, you know, occur that I have a thought, it's, you know, following the suggestions outlined in the big book, you know, and you know, connecting to a newcomer and just constantly, you know, reminding myself of the severity of this illness. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. So what I'll do, I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks so much, Ashley. You know, and I've had the privilege of knowing you now, coming up a couple of years or something. And, you know, to the part of the journey that's wonderful is sharing that experience, you know, and the mutual message of hope, faith, and courage that we carry to anyone, you know. And I'm sure you won't mind me saying, Ashley, you know, that that initially you was on the verge, if my memory serves me rightly, of shelling out thousands in a rehab when you first came along Cocaine Anonymous. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was correct, Paul. That was my sort of state of mind there, I think, at the time.
And you've not had to pay a penny, and here you are today.
Yeah, and that's what we offer here, isn't it? I think, you know,
what we offer. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think what you were sort of saying prior to the rehab, and, you know, I think that's, you know, for anyone that's new or listening, you know, I think that's the only option there is. But, you know, once we kind of open it up into a bigger, a bigger sort of fellowship like Cocaine Anonymous, there is opportunities to recover from this, you know, this disease of addiction, you know, alcoholism, you know, and it, you know, it's just it ain't easy, but it's worth it in the long run, isn't it, Paul?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I think that is a really important point, you know, because the reality is, you know, I've worked with, even in this last year, I've worked with more than a few blokes whilst they've been in rehab and when they've come out of rehab, you know, and no one's against rehabs. You know, it does equip people with a lot of knowledge. But the fact is that an addict, any addict, can get clean and stay clean without parting with a penny. That's a fact. I've seen it time and time again. I've seen marriages and relationships healed. I've seen minds healed and bodies healed. Not everything can be healed. You know, you was fortunate. You got off the train wreck before the crash. You know what I mean? It's a window of opportunity, and so did I. You know, but you know, for many people, they do end up in hospital, in sanitariums, you know, or in jail, you know, or they're just in such a state that a rehab is the only option. I've got a friend of mine that I've been working with for well, I guess it's around a year now, and they've just gone into detox a couple of days ago, you know, and then from there they'll be going into rehab. And then shortly after that, because of the expense of rehab, they'll probably be only been there a number of weeks. Then they'll be back in society. But the reality is that this program of action works in real life. That's the thing. Any addict, if you're listening to this message, you can get clean and you can stay clean in Cocaine Anonymous, you know, without parting with a red cent. You know, our promise is freedom, you know, and have to have life skills with a connection with God. You know, the problems can be solved. And, you know, I was listening to you share, and you and me have listened to each other many, many times, haven't we? And, you know,
Yeah.
I love listening to you, you know, because it's clarity. And one of the things that I'm really happy about is that you got out of the chaos before there was major consequences. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't.
No.
As listeners to the channel will know, you know, I had lots of running with the boys in blue and lots of wrestlings with the boys in blue.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't. My story wasn't one of like, you know, a mild sort of weekend problem. Not that it was in yours necessarily was, but many people's was. And the beautiful thing is, if someone had a Friday night problem, can come in these rooms, get clean, stay clean, have a happier future. If someone was living out of a spoon half a dozen times a day, a homeless, crack and heroin addict, burglaring and mugging folk, they can get clean and stay clean. You know, anyone can find recovery and sobriety and have a happier future.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
you know, we've got on the screen here, family, a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is the book that we use as our basic text in Cocaine Anonymous. It is available completely free to read and listen to anytime at aa.org. That's aa.org. As is the companion book that we use, a book called The 12 Steps and the 12 Traditions. Also, both books can be downloaded completely free as apps from the Google Play Store. And both books can be purchased for under £15 delivered from Amazon, eBay, and elsewhere. You know, I mean, it's like baking a cake, isn't it, Ashley? We have to have various ingredients. You know, now if I had to have 300 grams of flour, you know, and a certain quantity of butter and 4 eggs, you know, and this and that, and I had to do it in a certain way and then bake it for a certain period of time, I would always get the same results, wouldn't I? Always.
Yeah, that's true, Paul. Yeah.
But if I only put 2 eggs in, you could still eat it and it'd keep you going. It just might not taste great. Or if I reduce the flour or reduce the butter, you'd still have something eatable. And I find recoveries like that. I do, actually. I find that it's possible to have a paper plate with a few crisps and a cocktail stick or two, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a bit of fruit, and not have a 3-course meal when that's what's on offer in these rooms. You know, anyone that gets involved in Cocaine Anonymous has landed on pure gold. You know, the help and the friendship and the fellowship and the society, you know, and the program of action is very, very useful, you know. And you mentioned the literature. I just wanted to ask you, what parts of the literature do you find particularly helpful?
So yeah, I mean, getting onto the literature, like what Paul's sort of scrolling down towards now, page 39, more about alcoholism. For me, that was a great well, it still is, it doesn't ever get, to the point where I think that I've read something and I'm finished. I always sort of go back to the bits that stood out, like more about alcoholism. Something new will jump out that I've not come across, or there is a solution, for instance, and like there is a solution, and a vision for you. All these things for me that stood out. But yeah, I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Paul? I think
Absolutely, absolutely. And the various ingredients that I've found useful, actually, is particularly in early recovery, a meeting a day.
yeah,
A commitment to have half an hour in the recovery literature every day, even if it's in 2 or 3 segments.
yeah,
A commitment to reading personal spiritual literature for an hour a day. A commitment to start the day with prayer and contemplation, meditation, a little bit of journaling, having a support network, sharing in meetings at least every other day, even if it's just to say hello,
yeah,
working the fellowship, these simple suggestions, and also a commitment to sponsorship in the 12 steps. These are the ingredients for the cake, and you will always get the same results. If you've got those ingredients in every day, you will stay clean and have a happier future.
yeah, definitely.
And what was it that initially appealed to you when you first got in touch with Cocaine Anonymous?
Yeah, so I think initially, when I got involved or came across, the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous, I think what happened was I was in a sort of a government sort of scheme, I think at the time, and it was they kind of led me towards Cocaine Anonymous because I think they were doing what they were doing at the time, and I think they were saying that we can't help you much more, or they were saying we can give you 3 sessions, and it just weren't cutting it. So then I came into Cocaine Anonymous, and for me, I think what drew me into the movement of Cocaine Anonymous was people sharing their experience, and that I related to what they were talking about, and I was getting a bit of an understanding of this, this hopelessness, and for me, again, what I was sharing previously, it was just this thought, this idea of using. It was just too much for me to sort of stop, to stop this idea of using on my own accord. And, I started listening to some people, and it became apparent that you don't need to have this thought. You can do something different to suppress it, or there's a I got an understanding that there's a wide variety of solutions on offer within Cocaine Anonymous and the Alcoholics Anonymous big book, that we don't have to use or drink again if we're in a place that we've just kind of reached that point, or or even being willing to understand. But yeah, I think that's my
Absolutely. And let's talk about the steps. I mean,
yeah,
in step 1, I get transparent and accountable to myself and God and my sponsor. I look at the reality, the consequences of my active addiction. I look at the unmanageability, internal and external. I look at the problems that have manifested in my life as a result of internal unhappiness, internal disagreement, disconnection from God. I'm convinced that all the problems upon earth are to do with disconnection from God. That leads me to wrong thinking. Wrong thinking leads me to wrong living, and wrong living is my lifestyle. Connection with God, and for many of us, when we first come in, that's by listening in meetings, the literature, step work. Sooner or later, we realise that it's God. that has been almost universally my experience. I would say in over 90% of persons I've come across over the years in amongst the program, Ashley. And the transparency in step one is the thing, the honest admission of the powerlessness, the vicious cycle of addiction. You mentioned it earlier, the thinking, the external unmanageability, the how we accepted the unacceptable. You know what I mean? I mean, I know to the things you mentioned, which albeit mild on the scale of the things when it comes to addiction, the actions and the consequences are still unthinkable, really. You normally wouldn't think of doing those things, but when it comes to that craving, that obsession of the mind, everything else goes out the window. It's like, no, use, it's the obsession of the mind. And with that connection with a higher power, with God, God sets us free from that negative, dark reasoning. That catastrophic reasoning is similar to the just use reasoning. It's like an agreement with the law of power, and we become bedeviled by the obsession to use. And when we take that first one, it starts an obsession of the mind, but then the body wants another one. When you take that first one, your power of choice then is almost completely nil. You still have some power of choice, otherwise you'd be able to make the phone call and go and score in the real world. But the power of choice is drastically diminished in the mind of an addict because they've got an obsession of the mind. And then when they take that first one, it sets off the craving, the phenomena of craving. And then that first one wants another one, and that one wants another 4. And then you're off to the races.
Yeah, that's it, Paul.
And in step 2, I'm on step 2 an hour from now, actually. I get to learn, Ashley, about the ways in which God will restore me to sanity, the ways in which meetings will restore me to sanity, the ways in which conversations like we're having right now will restore me and keep me sane today. I learn about how the study of the literature, the recovery literature, of which there's lots. We use 2 prime books, but there's lots of good recovery books. The reading of the literature prayerfully and thoughtfully will restore me and keep me sane. Regular step work with the sponsor. The sponsor is someone that's got a home group, that's knowledgeable about our recovery literature, that understands the 12 steps, that understands the obsession of the mind, that understands the disease of addiction. Service, working with others, a home group. All these things are the ways in which God will restore me to right thinking around addiction.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Paul. I think it's just, I relate, I relate to what you say, and that's my kind of, outlook on it, I suppose. Getting into some action and being a part of this, the fellowship. Like it says in the book, and what we hear in the rooms, and listening to other people share, and not kind of going on what I think I know, and having, and I think that's what it's taught me, being able to listen and have some patience, and being reminded of this illness, the lack of thinking illness, or
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Paul.
Yeah, so I mean, many of us come in and we have to learn about the obsession of the mind, the craving of the body, the disease of addiction. We call it the spiritual malady. There's many podcasts on this channel. I'd suggest any listeners to check out the other 36 recordings on this channel. We've got one on the spiritual malady. We've got one on the ABCs of addiction. We've got one on what is sponsorship. Am I ready to become a sponsor? There's one on that. There's another one in how do I sponsor? There's one on each of the 12 steps. There's actually 2 on step 1 and 2 on step 2. There's about 8 or 9 personal stories. There's an introduction to C.A. There's lots of information on this channel, folks, so please avail yourself of that knowledge. We've had some really knowledgeable, experienced people come on the channel and talk about these things. I just want to talk actually about the obsession to use. I want to talk about, we come in and we learn these things, don't we, in the first instance? And as you said, you became receptive to the truth. We learn to think the truth, speak the truth, and live the truth. We come out of the darkness, out of the lie, out of the deception, don't we?
Yeah, we do, Paul. Yeah, that's correct.
And
I think,
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, sorry, Paul. Yeah, I was just going to say, what you were saying, we come out of the darkness and we come into the light, and yeah, that's been my experience. Not being worried about what others are saying or doing. And it is another thing as well. The obsession to use was a major factor for me. Not having the ability to, tap into some power around my thinking and doing, and also when for me, when the drugs and the alcohol were put down, it was then actually realizing that other people were being affected and I was affecting them. And now it's been apparent that it doesn't necessarily matter what others are doing or saying or acting, I suppose.
That's right. We're now responsible for our recovery.
Yeah.
Now we've got a commitment to abstinence in God's power. We're now responsible and accountable for our recovery. I want to just talk briefly. I want to just talk briefly about once we come in and we get sober, we start listening humbly at meetings. We build a relationship with God. We get into step work with a sponsor. We get a home group. We have a commitment to reading the literature and our spiritual literature, and we start to grow and we start to change. Then there's such a thing as learning about the thinking before a relapse. What happens in the mind of a recovering addict before they pick up drink and drugs again? And some of what I've just been putting up on the screen there, which is from the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the chapter more about alcoholism, it talks about the center of the problem, the topic that needs to be discussed is the thinking and the living before someone picks up drink and drugs again, because it's quite an important thing.
Yeah.
So what the point I'm trying to make actually is we first come in and we'll learn about the disease of addiction. We learn what we suffer from, the illness, the problem, the malady. And then an important part of staying clean is learning to keep an eye on your thought life and your words and your behavior, because they're the indicators as to how well you're doing and how stable you are in recovery.
Yeah, that's true, Paul.
Right. So living clean, keeping a clean heart and a clean mind, getting rid of resentments, fear and harms. When we're resentful and fearful, we're angry and confused. When we're angry and confused, we hurt people, because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
So step 4 is about getting clear of being angry and confused, resentful and fearful, and being harmful. And then we get into the steps. We realize in step 5 the exact nature of our wrongs. From those, we identify our character defects and our character assets. And then we humbly ask God to remove them. We make amends. We learn to take personal inventory, nightly inventory. We learn about a mini inventory in step 10. We learn about conscious contact, prayer, meditation in 11. We're conscious that we've had a spiritual awakening and why we've had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps in 12. We learn how we can try to carry a message of hope, faith, and courage to others. We try to practice these principles in all our affairs. That's the 4 parts of step 12. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
Then we continue in the journey, in the process. And self-awareness, an awareness of thoughts and speech and behavior is really what's involved in keeping ourselves well and whole, clean and sober, and to be reasonably productive in life. It is a bridge to normal living. What do you think, Ashley?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just going to gonna sort of comment back on what you were saying there. Yeah, that, you know, it is true. I think we get a chance to, you know, be a part of society, like you were saying, and you know, things start sort of happening for us without us even realizing. I mean, that's been my experience, you know, without even trying to, you know, um, you know, try to make things happen. You know, it's just what's happened. You know, I've taken on what's been asked, and you know, you start getting responsibilities, and you know, and I think the biggest thing is regaining people's trust back again, you know, because I smashed all that to pieces when I was in active addiction, and you know, and people start taking you seriously again, and you just, before you know it, you're a part of reality, because that was one thing that I escaped, was reality, and today it's different. You know, it's being a part of reality and being a part of society without, you know, without being fearful of what others are thinking, and like you were saying, Paul, you know, just having a chance to just, you know, not sort of get resentful over things, and just being acceptant of everything. And I think this is what, you know, the 12 steps and the previous chapters are teaching us, isn't it, Paul? I think.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and building a relationship with God, the creator, is at the
Yeah.
source of it all. It says there on the page, his defense must come from a higher power. You know,
Yeah.
so it's quite interesting, because you said earlier, Ashley, you know, that you can restore yourself to sanity, you know,
Yeah.
and in the language of step 2, you know, a power greater than ourselves restores us to sanity. And I think it's a careful balance between human responsibility and divine sovereignty.
Mm.
What that means is that, yes, God can restore you to sanity, but you have to be responsible for your recovery today, you know, and I have to
Yes.
be responsible for my recovery today. It's not necessarily what I say or what I think, but what I do.
Yeah.
You know, it's the action that I take. And it
Yeah.
says it there, you know, it says you were 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Can you see it in the middle of the page there? And
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, you know, and that's what it is. Divine help is given. I mean, probably around 25 million folks have found long-term sobriety through the trinity of NA, AA, and CA. You know,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, everything's by grace and mercy. But we do know that we get the privilege of working with others. You know, we get the
Yeah.
privilege of listening to others share in meetings. You know, we get the common knowledge, the common message of hope, faith, and courage that any addict can lose the desire to use and
Yes.
find a new way to live. And you and I have been privileged to know many people that have got clean and stayed clean in the time, you know, that you've been around the rooms.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I was, you know, just briefly going on what you were saying, you know, hearing people, you know, share this message of, you know, hope, faith, and courage. And like you say, Paul, if you want to hear somebody talking some, you know, some honest truth around, you know, this stuff, this is probably one of the reasons why I come into the rooms, is to, you know, listen to this, you know, the solution, you know, around that, you know, we don't have to use. There is, you know, there is a solution within the 12
Yeah,
step.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, negatives are developed in the dark.
Yeah.
Transparency, accountability, commitment
Yeah.
is what happens through the 12 steps. You know, I
Yeah.
become honest, I become accountable to God, to you, to myself. I put
Yeah.
pen to paper. 6 of the steps are inventory steps. Step 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And, you know, as a result, I get some honesty and clarity. Now, we're coming towards the end of the recording today. You know, I'm going to let you back in for a minute or two to share with our listeners any final thoughts But
Yeah.
on the screen, family, I put up a list of meetings. This is just some of the Cocaine Anonymous meetings. There are hundreds and hundreds. If you go to the web address at the top there, and bear in mind, listeners, you can pause this video. You can get involved in the conversation beneath this video. You can log on to a Zoom meeting at any time of day or night. If you're in Britain, you can go to cocaineanonymous.org.uk and find physical face-to-face meetings. There is lots of help out there, family. So stay connected, stay strong, stay in the solution. Now, on this screen here, Ashley, and these are all UK times that I'm going to be mentioning. If you look at the top left underneath the pink box, you'll see the Breakfast Club. That's on every day at 7:30, which is too early for me, it has to be said, but there it is, every day at 7:30. Great Gratitude every morning at 9:30. Underneath that, Pop-Up Recovery every morning at 10:30. We Can Recover is on every day at 2 o'clock. It's also on at 8 o'clock, 2 and 8 every day. We Can Recover. Daily Reprieve at the top right is on every night at 9:30. Reaching Out is on every night at 11, and Tarzana is on every night at midnight. So that is 8 meetings that are on 365 days a year. You know, so by all means, come along to a Zoom meeting. Never feel you have to put your camera on. Only about 20% of participants put their camera on, and don't feel you need to talk. You're not obliged to talk. You can just come along and listen. If you want to share, conversely, you're welcome to share. So please pause this and get yourself the Zoom app. Come along to meetings, and of course, ideally get yourself to a face-to-face meeting. Now, in closing, is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners, Ashley?
Yeah, I think there's, like you were just saying, Paul, there's such a wide variety of meetings that are available to the newcomers or people that are struggling. So yeah, I think I'll just end it on, if there are anyone, or if there is anyone new that is listening, come along and just have an open mind to this. And yeah, I'll leave it there, Paul.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ashley. That's great. Yeah, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. HOW is the how of the program. Steps 1, 2, and 3. The ABCs were alcoholic. Probably no human power could relieve us of our alcoholism. There is one with all power that can help us and set us free from the obsession to use drugs and drink. So, there is a hope, there is a future. Stay connected, family, and thanks so much for tuning in to today's broadcast. Until next time, thank you, Ashley, once again.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, family. Bye-bye.